powder, freshies, shred sugar, white gold, blower, nut fluff, Kool-Aid. Powder has been coined with thousands of names over the past century. Whatever you call it, wherever you ski it, it shares one undeniable trait. It fucking rocks. Woo! Woo! Oh! Woo! Oh! Big powder days are what all of us obsessed skiers dream and constantly crave. There's nothing in the world that beats that feeling of icy snow slapping your cheeks, soft apologetic landings, and deep snow hugging your shins. It's simply incredible. Powder skiing is complete bliss, but not for everyone. No way! Shredding POW is foreign to a lot of skiers and riders, especially if you're just starting out or if you live in a geographical climate that just doesn't get dumped on that often. And in this video, I'm gonna give you 10 practical tips so you can improve your POW skiing and ski powder like a pro. Now say that 10 times fast because that alliteration might even be harder than learning to POW ski itself. Let's get into it. Number one, and first things first, stay loose and stay light. When new skiers ski POW for the first time, they're either super excited or they're super terrified. And both aren't the best because when you see your skis and your tips start to dip beneath the snow, sometimes a new skier will freak out and they'll tense up. And when you tense up, instead of being in an athletic and confident position, you start leaning back more and freaking out and worrying about your edges. So it's really important to just relax and stay loose and have some fun with it because you're not going to be able to make those adjustments if you're tense. And remember, falling in powder is fun. If you have soft, forgiving snow, you're not going to get hurt. So stay loose with it. And when you practice these next tips, just remember, stay loose, stay light. POW skiing is all about flow and fluidity when you're riding versus, super tense, aggressive turns. And remember, if you ain't falling, you ain't trying. Number two, begin with dust on crust conditions. So if it's your first ever POW day and you're up the chairlift, you're stoking, don't go right for the run that never gets groomed because underneath that run, there's going to be moguls. And if you're struggling with POW skiing, you probably still aren't the #1 mogul skier on the mountain either. So don't challenge yourself with too many things right off the bat. Because if you have moguls, steep terrain, trees, and powder, that's just too many variables, man. Like simplify, simplify, simplify. Some of the funnest skiing can just be done on a groomed run with a layer of POW on top. So find a groomed run with a layer of POW on top, and runs get groomed at different times throughout the night. So on a 1 foot powder day, there might only actually be a quarter of a foot on a run that got groomed earlier in the morning or something like that. So find that level and then play with that. Because if you get that fresh tracks on top of the groom, it's more predictable and it's going to be easier to start to get the feel of turning without being overwhelmed by too much powder or other hazards that you have to be concerned about in the snow. Because the main goal is to start getting the feel for your skis being in powder, and having a predictable layer underneath that powder is good for you to see how your skis are going to start reacting to that different type of heavy snow that you'll be skiing on. Number three, steeper terrain and speed is your friend. So the number one thing I find newer skiers to POW struggle with is they think they can just ski the same flat terrain on POW and be able to turn on it, but it's an impossibility. Powder is going to slow you down. It's going to naturally break you, especially when it's deep enough against your boot shins. So you need some level of speed to actually be able to turn in the snow. You need to use speed to your advantage, or you need to use steep pitches to your advantage. If you're on something super flat, I couldn't even turn on a green run with a foot of powder. It's not happening. It's so much work to turn your skis. You want to let momentum work for you. If the snow's deep enough, also play with just going straight and the resistance of the snow slowing you down if you see you've got a nice flat part. Just good to practice things like that. Another side tip, if you ever have to hike in powder, do not take your skis off. Your skis act as natural snowshoes. So the second your skis come off, you're going to sink. And we call that post-holing. And sometimes you'll sink to your waist. And it is a hell of a lot of work to walk when you're sinking in the snow. And it's going to be hard to even get your skis back on. So leave those skis on and, walk like a frickin' duck until you get where you need to go, or sidestep where you need to go, because you're going to be in more pain, trust me, if you take those skis off. And POW skiing's all about pleasure, not pain. Number 4 is stance. Stance is super essential in skiing in general, and you always want to be changing your stance depending on the speed you're going and the style of skiing that you're doing. So my initial recommendation in powder is just be as athletic as you can. You want your knees bent and you want to be stable. Now I'm going to go against the grain here. A lot of ski instructors, CSIA certified instructors will say, all right, knees on the front of your boots, stand forwards, hands out all the time, okay? Always weight forwards, balance, knees bent, and ski through the powder. Sure, those are great technical skiing tips, but the reality is if you're leaning forward in powder, it's going to be very hard for you to initially figure out how to pivot your skis. In order to do that, you have to start kind of jumping in powder. So what I want you to do with your stance is feel the difference in the pow. Lean back, feel that float when you're leaning back. Feel how easy it is to kind of, flick your skis back and forth when you're leaning back, even though that's not necessarily a good skiing stance. Bring your stance forward, feel it out a little bit, feel how it feels to maybe make those turns when you're leaning forward. Sometimes when the snow is really wet coast, really heavy, there is no human way that I can ski it without speed if I am not leaning backwards and pulling my tips out of the snow. So I know every instructor is going to be in the comment section being like, you're a trash skier, you ski in the back seat. Yeah, I'm not a professionally trained skier. I'm just a dude who skis. I enjoy skiing pow, but sometimes you got to lean back. So play with the stance, get a feel for the stance, okay? When it comes to the width of your feet, it just depends on the turns that you're making. If you're going to make bigger, faster turns, just like carving, you can go a bit wider, but most of the time in the POW, I bring my skis closer than I am when I'm skiing on the groomer. So my skis come closer, very similar to skiing moguls, and having those skis closer kind of allows you to kind of bounce through the turn. It's much harder to, I find, bounce back and forth and pivot those skis when they're wider apart without speed. So my recommendation would be play with your stance. So bring it in, bring it out, lean back, lean forwards. You're going to find with the different snow types what stance is going to feel the best, And of course, as active as you can be is good. If you're leaning back, have your knees bent. Don't be leaning back straight. You're going to fall, right? But play with it. Number 5, steering. So steering is very different than when you're on a groomed run. So on a groomed run, you can kind of point your tips where you want to go when you're first learning, and then you're going to be rolling your ankles on your edges when you're steering. But on powder, it's pretty different. So when you're powder skiing, you're not going to be able to rely on your edges much at all. You're going to need to focus on using your legs to turn. So remember to always keep your body facing downhill and let your legs do all the work. Turning too much with your body will slow you down if you're going across the hill. And sometimes when the snow is super deep, you can only slightly point your tips the other direction so you can glide and float from side to side. Steering needs to be rhythmic. It's got to be fluid. And if you have a great feeling turn, just replicate it on the other side and do it over and over again. Number 6, use short pumping turns. Pumping turns is kind of the best tip I think I can give you in this video when you're first figuring it out. So when you're carving, you're closing off your turns and you're rolling your ankles, but in the POW, it's different. You're not rolling your ankles, you're just bouncing. Literally, you have to imagine yourself kind of like bouncing with your legs into one turn and then bouncing into the next and bouncing. Every turn is more of a bounce than it is like a shift in turn. And like once again, the CSIA skiers are going to be like, you want to close off each and every turn and bring that turn right across with your legs, your body downhill. Sure, but once again, in deep POW, it's not really going to work like that. You keep your body down the hill, you let your legs do the work, and you kind of jump back and forth. And that's going to teach you that fluidity to stay on top, is that kind of bounce back and forth with speed. And that's the feeling that you're trying to get, right? Instead of those awkward weight shifts, it's that fluid kind of bounce. And that's the best way to help you get your skis around, especially if you're not skiing super fast. Like if you watch some of those guides make turns, they're going super slow and they're just bouncing. Number 7, pole planting. You never thought you'd have to go back to the basics of pole planting, but trust me, pole planting is so damn important when you're skiing POW. That rhythmic timing is super important with that bounce around the turn. Pole planting is best practice, in my opinion, on moguls. If you can perfect mogul skiing, you can literally get on flat ground powder and try and ski the powder pretty much the same as you ski those moguls, and your technique's going to be pretty damn good. But pole planting is integral for keeping rhythm and timing while you're ripping in the POW. You don't got to stick your pole to the bottom of the snowpack, but just rub it over the surface of the snow and make sure you're keeping that timing dialed. Also, bring poles along because it's pretty helpful to push yourself around and opt for a bigger pole basket instead of a super tiny race basket when you're skiing POW, because your pole will sink and it's nice to push yourself around. Number 8, carving turns. So once you kind of get the hang of those jumping turns, try some higher speed turns. Try some higher speed carving turns. These are big arcing turns that you see most big mountain skiers doing in the powder. These are some of my favorite style of turn to do while skiing. I always mix it up depending on the pitch and the width of the area that I'm skiing. In order to practice this, it's the same thing as when you learn to carve on a groomer. Just practice doing some J-turns. A little bit of a straight line, and a J-turn, once again, is you're drawing a J into the snow. So you're turning down and you're turning up the snow. So imagine that, because you kind of want to start getting a feel for like, okay, I can feel an edge on a groomer. What does an edge feel like on powder? And be prepared for things to feel a little more grabby and a little more light, as you close it off, a little more light. But it's good to feel all the different turn shapes when you're learning to ski powder, so you can pull them all out of your arsenal when needed. Number 9, this one's a pretty easy hack that anyone can do, and that's ride a powder ski. So I rode my whole life on a 77 millimeter ski, if not skinnier, when I was learning at Manning Park as a kid. And we'd have deep POW days, nipple deep POW days when I used to be that short. I didn't get my first POW ski. My first POW ski was an Elan Blog. I bought it 22 years old, and I was skiing Whistler, and I saw everyone wasn't riding these skinny skis. They were riding bigger skis. So I bought like $150 Elan Blog ski with crap bindings, and that's a ski that I rode for a season to get my first feel for a POW ski. And it really does make a difference. Having a rockered POW ski is kind of a cheat code when you're skiing POW. So instead of how I was saying, you got to bounce, bounce, bounce to get those skis around. A POW ski is going to be more rockered, and it's going to allow you to smear with that tip more easily. That tip is not going to be diving under the snow as much on you when you turn. It's going to allow you to kind of have that easier kind of turning, and that rocker is going to give you that shift that you want with the skis much easier. The flotation is just really nice. You're not going to find yourself sinking and your edges grabbing as much. So definitely a good hack is to buy a powder ski or use a powder ski. I think anyone, like I said, I learned on a skinny ski for everything. And I think if you're not going to get the basics on a skinny ski, a powder ski is not going to save you, but it is a great hack to make your life a little bit easier and work a little less hard on the POW snow. And lastly, number 10, play around and have fun. Learning to ski and learning to POW ski especially is all just a game of experimentation. And if you don't have fun, you're not going to go out and do it again. So have fun. Don't be afraid to fall, and just give her. Don't worry about all the POW hounds out there who are all serious and angry in the lift line in the morning and whizzing past you. Fuck them, right? Just get out there, enjoy yourself. As whack as you're going to be trying to figure out how to ski POW, it's a blast. It's a great feeling, and make sure you progress slowly in the powder, but sooner or later, it'll be effortless, and it'll be your favorite type of snow to ski as well. Let me know in the comments if there's any other POW skiing tips that you'd like to recommend to anyone watching this video. I love when you guys share your thoughts and your advice in the comments, because there's a lot more experienced and better skiers watching this video than I am. Like I said, and like I say all the time, I have a level 1 instructor certification, but I am not a ski coach. I'm not a professional. I'm just an amateur dude who skis a lot and loves it. So the tips that I give you are always just practical tips that can help you ski, and you don't have to fuss about, expensive lessons and drills, even though they're really helpful. It's just simple stuff that can make you better, coming from a guy who figured it out all on his own as well. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Can't wait for the next frickin' POW day. Stay spicy, folks. Sayonara.